Hi, I'm going to talk about my story some here in hopes that maybe it'll help another person along the way. Um, my family, this all started when I was a child. All my siblings, we were quite young, and my mom and dad knew this person who was pretty much a psychopath, but at the time they didn't know it. Um, but she continued to get closer and more involved with my family. And I think being my mom didn't think she had her own power at the time, she allowed this woman into her life slowly and developed into a cult. I'd say when I was around 11 years old, this woman started telling my mom that things were going to be different and that all her feelings and thoughts and dreams meant something other than what my mom should have been able to interpret them as. Basically, she gave away her power to this other person. So, in a nutshell, as time went by, things changed. We couldn't just go play. We had these talks that things are going to be different. We couldn't have boyfriends, girlfriends. Everything was based on fear, that if we were allowed to do these things, then we'd just automatically get into trouble, sex, drugs, and alcohol. But it happened really slowly over time, but it was about 11 years old that when we had this first talk, I remember very distinctly that my mom sat us down and told us life was going to be different. I can't remember details of that talk, but I just had this wave of oppression come over me and fear. Like, my God, this lady's crazy. Why is she telling our mom to tell us these things? But of course, I was 11 and I didn't have anyone to talk to or discuss these feelings. Like, adults are supposed to know, about life. So even though my instinct was raving mad about this was wrong, it must be true because mom is saying so. So I'll jump ahead. Graduating from high school, I had to work in this business that this other family developed. It was a furniture factory. We made our own furniture designs, but I was scooped up as an artist just because I had a natural artistic talent. Even as a younger kid, we had to make things for the store. But then we just kept having to make things, turned out originally as wood burnings. And then we had to do wood carvings and rustic kind of primitive folk art stuff, which developed into more detailed stuff over time. But it wasn't fun because, all I was screaming in my head was, what about my free will? Isn't life supposed to be that you go out in the world and you learn from your own mistakes and you have your own adventures? As right or wrong as these decisions may be, kept going on through my head, and I was just like tormented and tortured. And if we had an original thought or a feeling, or we were really happy, or our family had done something on our own, she would get wind of it and then she'd scream at us and saying that we're not mature in the spirit. And all this stuff, and over time it just completely messed with our minds, because she would use fear tactics to keep us there. Like if we ever left, we would forever be ostracized, you know. And hearing that as a 14-year-old, it really grips you inside, and you do what you're fucking told to do thereafter. It's hard to explain how long this happened and how many things I've witnessed, and not only happened to like me, but I had to witness each individual person in my family get berated by her and screamed at and called up on the phone if my sister was making freaking cookies in the kitchen when she should be making art. And but anyway, it was such a heavy burden to bear all this, and it's, yeah, like I said, it's just really difficult to describe how someone can reach into your soul, find your weaknesses or your sweet spots. Not even the weaknesses, they just might be your gifts, but they latch onto that. You know, your gift of sensitivity or your gift of intuition, they latch onto that, and they just pound and pound and pound it out of you and say that you're, you know, inherently wrong for who you are. Your emotions are wrong. And then you react after getting brutally abused. And then your reaction to that abuse becomes who you are in their eyes. So they pound on you for being so quiet, or you don't talk. But then when you do talk and say how you really feel, you get ripped into. Anyway, I mustered up the courage to leave at age 28, and it just so happened my youngest sister, in her own private time, was mustering up the courage to leave too, and we just happened to talk to each other, because we didn't all talk to each other much, because this person, she was able to manipulate, kind of compartmentalize all of us in separate bubbles, so we didn't know what was going on with the other person all the time. Yeah, we heard, you know, we'd get together and she'd zone in on somebody, make an example out of them, and beat the emotional crap out of them in front of everybody, so that, you know, we would keep in line, so that that wouldn't happen to us. Became probably our greatest fear, is to get zoned in on like that in front of all the families that were involved. There's about 4 families, but this person's son had left when he was young, and he just left because she was crazy at age 18. When he graduated, he just left and never talked to her again. So that became, I personally think that became the one key point that she latched onto our family then. And then we became her children in the spirit. And then she would just lay into my mom, saying that she was a horrible mom. that all our kids are messed up, and we have to become these women in the spirit and men in the spirit, but she used that tool of her son leaving as this to reach into us, and with her pain and her tears and her sorrow, that it was all on us to grow in the spirit and learn these lessons, according to her, that would bring her son home. And like, one example I can remember, the horrible thing that happened, is that at the furniture factory, this, the garbage man just came in the door one day, pale as a ghost, and said, "Hey man, you got, there's this guy laying dead in the back parking lot by the truck. Looks like he shot himself with a rifle." And she blamed my brothers for that happening, because they weren't men, they're, Satan influenced energy brought this person in to do this, never once saying this poor soul probably didn't want his family to find him dead, so he just thought that it would be better for people who didn't frickin' know him to find him, so that his family wouldn't have to suffer. Apparently he was dying of cancer, is what the story was. He didn't want to be a burden for his wife and family. But that's how twisted she made things. And she made my brothers go out there, not just hose it down, the mess, but she made them get on their hands and knees and scrub the blood off with, scrub brushes, just to punish them. But like I said, it takes years and years, decade and a half to just really pound someone and threaten them with violence, emotional and physical violence, and sexual abuse. Because she accused us of, I was 14, and she accused us that I was a whore, that I'd spread my legs for any man. I mean, what kind of 14-year-old needs to hear that when I was fearing for my life at that time? Nowhere to go, no one to talk to. We were isolated. Either went to school, but then when I graduated, we'd work at this shop, and then we'd go home, sleep, eat supper, sleep, and then go back to work 6 days a week. We just had Sunday off, and she was even poking around in our private business, how whether our fucking socks were folded in our drawers right, things like that. But another thing I want to say is, after I left, like I said, I was 28 years old. It took me a whole decade to realize how bad it was and how messed up my mind was and how much PTSD I had. A book literally fell off the shelf at the bookstore while I was fumbling through books, and I picked it up, and it was a book about complex PTSD, and I thought, wow, somebody was looking out for me. I actually found out what my problem was, living in complex PTSD in a constant basis, and not even knowing it, yet somehow still functioning and working. And at that point I had found my husband, had a baby, divorced within a few years, like just a couple years after I left this cult, thinking that I could do what normal people do. But it was horrible. I didn't even know how to, I hardly knew how to laugh. I didn't know how to enjoy my child. Like, oh, it's hard to describe sometimes, but I'll make more videos if I think, people want to hear some more about like specific day in a life and really get down to the nitty-gritty of how I felt, but and how I got through it. But it took about a decade to realize how bad it had really been, and how isolated we were, and how abused we were. And the key thing the reason I found that out is because I watched a video on Jim Jones' son and his experience in that cult that his dad created, and how he felt, and what it was like, and what he witnessed, and how he felt, when it ended and all that. And I'm like, oh my God, I had just a light bulb went on. So then after that, I just spent slowly over time. I mean, other things happened, other traumas. My dad died, and, family, suicide attempt in the family, because of the cult trauma, unresolved traumas, other things, just trying to be the rock too, the glue that helped my family get through all this, because I knew my sisters were struggling and my mom, and because by then, everybody had left except for my two brothers. Never left. Haven't talked to them since. That's been, I don't know, 25 years almost. I think around 25 years. I'll have to do the math, but they still don't know. They have nieces and nephews that are beautiful adults now. They're adults. They've never seen them, which is really sad. But I would have cried my eyes out years ago about that topic, but now I've just accepted that I probably won't see them until after they're dead and I'm dead and on the other side or something. But I don't know, maybe something would happen. Still got a lot of years in my life. My oldest brother is 10 years older than me. He'd be about 65. But yeah, I think I lost track of what I was talking about. But anyway, I took about a decade to realize how bad it was, and then another 5 years to really start facing it without constantly trying to avoid it and just constantly trying to be busy in life and work. And so then about 13 years ago, I decided to go to school for law enforcement and become a cop, because I thought, what better way to face my fears with this cult. But it became almost overbearing. I learned a lot about the inside workings of the cop world and things that I just could not get past. It reminded me too much of the cult I was in, the controlled systems, I met a lot of awesome people, but I had become a deputy reserve for a year, I think a year. But I opened my mouth on a few things that were pretty much bothering everybody, and I got canned for it just because I said kind of what the majority, well, I can't speak for just what I heard and what bothered others. I just spoke up about a few things that bothered me, and they forced me to retire. So it's like all that work going to law enforcement school, and then you get canned from the reserves. I tried so hard for 3 years to do everything, to be a good cop and be a good candidate to get hired. Go on just tons of ride-alongs. I learned so much. Every single ride-along was fascinating, and it was pretty exciting, but I was so traumatized still from this cult, and I just could not get past certain things, and I just couldn't get past the thought of having to arrest people, because I felt like my whole life I was arrested in that cult. Like, day after fucking day, I was arrested for things I didn't do. I just... Anyway, so there was that. And then, plus I had a couple days after I found out I was pregnant, just a couple years after I left this cult, I got in an auto accident and damaged the discs in my neck, and over time they just got worse and worse. I went to a spine specialist, and they said that many of his patients are cops, and he flat out told me he doesn't think I should go into that. So between that and the PTSD issues that I just couldn't get past and wasn't ready to process and let go, and the control of this world, this law enforcement world, just felt so claustrophobic. I just quit. I was done. Decided not to do that. And then I spent a couple of years till I figured out something else, and I tried a business with my sister with art, like a classes, like we do classes, but I still had just loads of PTSD related to making art. It wasn't joyful, and I was just having breakdowns, and I couldn't continue with that either. And then I decided to go into welding. I got my certificate, and then, oh my god, a guy, not a kid, but Marine veteran, committed suicide. One of the classmates, and that was just really hard on everybody. And plus, I don't know, the injury to my neck was just too hard. I just kept trying to work and work and work, do something, figure out my life. But anyway, been a painter for some years since then, but even that I can't do anymore, so technically unemployed because of this COVID. I mean, not because of the COVID, but they basically fired me from my temp job because they were going to hire me after working a certain amount of time. They were going to hire me, and then they fired me because I was honest about my neck injury. Yeah. I thought, wow, a question on the app. We will work, with you on this, if it's reasonable expectations or whatever reasonable. I mean, my issue was lifting something that was too heavy, like 40 pounds. I mean, I can lift 30, but not 40 on a regular basis. But they hire handicapped people there. So like I thought, wow, they're gonna work with my neck injury. they freaking fired me. I was so upset. Like, I can't get anywhere in life. Oh my god. So anyway, this last year has been a lot of living with myself with no distractions and facing all those scary corners. And then my mom's been in the hospital a couple times this last couple weeks. She's doing okay, but that's very stressful. And anyway, that's probably all I'm going to talk about so far, but talking about starting from scratch over and over and over, lose everything like multiple times in your life. And I'm 55 right now, and I'm still there. That's what really gets me, because I feel like, where am I supposed to be? What do I do next? I just holed up in this house during COVID. Half the people are fearing it, half the people are not. But I know it's real. But I've decided I'm not going to fear it. I know it's just a badass, horrible flu. And if your immune system is compromised, it'll mess you up. But I don't know. This world is going through exactly what I went through in that cult. The layers are coming off. People are freaking out. There's division where people think that they're right, 100% on both sides, putting down the other side. I see it in both sides. I like to understand everybody, because everybody has their point of view. Everybody has to be patient with everyone around them, because it's really hard, because what's happening in the world now is triggering people on the deepest levels. If people come at you, barking and bitching and putting you down, it's a lot of it has to do with whatever load they've had to deal with their entire life. Some people just aren't pleasant. Nobody really, not too many have had the tools to deal with their load. It's fucking heavy. I see all these people speaking out, and so many people have inspired me over the years. I guess I just don't want to hide my story. Not that I have, but there's so many people that don't want to hear it. Only a small fraction of the people I've known in my entire life actually want to hear it. And I'm telling it like it is. People need to start talking about what they've been through. I don't care what it is. Connecting with people My greatest fear, because I've been so abused, is my greatest fear is criticism. Somebody putting me down, not understanding me, just their flapjack and crap in comments, social media. I've gotten so much stronger. My biggest fear is speaking in public. So I'm starting get my freaking face out there. Anyway, I think I'm done chatting about this topic. I just don't want to feel alone. I know I have my own support team, my family, but even in that, we're all in our own little bubbles, working on our own version of the same fucking cult that we were in. Because none of us in the family had the same exact experience. This person knew how to isolate each one of us. Golly. It's the way the world has been, the way the media is treating the world right now. They got these isolation agendas. Isolate, divide, conquer. Yeah, it's fucking heavy, and it's the hardest thing you'll ever have to do is reach into yourself and feel those traumas. I mean, it's not like you have to relive it over and over. Like, I've never been raped, you know. And sometimes I feel like I wish I would have just been traumatized once like that, and that's all I would have to focus on, is that one day in time. But what happened to me was, boy, age 11 till 28, when I feared for my soul. Like, I feared for that part of you that keeps you alive and that keeps your mind and your heart together as one. I feared that this person would break me, you know, like I'd go catatonic, or that I'd lose my shit, or that I'd end up turning into her or one of her little minions. I refused to be that way. When I was there, I just kept to myself as much as I could. But, I don't know, doing art was the thing she preyed on, and we worked for minimum wage the whole time we were there. Even less than minimum wage, I think. I don't know. Yeah, because first our art was just sold as the piece, you know, price put on it, and we got less than minimum wage. And then by the time I was done there, we were making these elaborate, intricate art pieces, and they weren't being sold for what they were worth. They were snatched up. All the shit was bought. You know, it was the art that sometimes got the business afloat when furniture sales were low. But, man, she basically raped us. Raped our soul, our sanity. I still don't know if she was conscious of what she was doing, or she was just fucked up herself and in pain and tried to steal a brilliant, bright family because hers left because she was so evil to them and abusive. Physically and emotionally, she was abusive to her kids. So she just preyed on my mom, a naive young woman. Oh, man. Anyway, that's about it for one time. See you later.